AirWallex are under investigation. So Australia's financial crimes regulator has launched an investigation into AirWallex over suspected anti-money laundering failures. Now, this is all to do with like weak customer checks or poor monitoring of risky transactions. AirWallex have been growing significantly. I know Indy is always talking about this stuff, and you have to get that balance between getting your security right, but without limiting growth. And I'm guessing that AirWallex have not quite got the balance right here. Now, they've just recently raised $500 million for a valuation of $8 billion US, which is nuts. So they are, a huge company now, and having something like this, disrupts that to some extent. They've been, fully cooperative. They're saying they really want to help in the investigation, as you should do, and make sure that if there is anything that is uncovered that is weak, that they're going to rectify that as soon as feasible. Out of this, apart from, I guess, this being a challenge for AirWallex and anyone that's using AirWallex, the timing of this for when Dext are about to launch Dext payments powered by AirWallex couldn't possibly be any worse for Dext, could it? Now, I guess their view might be, well, we're doing a lot of it, but AirWallex is the underlying engine for it, and it needs to go through the to some extent the AML processes to make sure it's compliant with them. I think that Dex should be getting in front of this, and maybe they have. I'm not seeing it, but they should be stating that from their perspective, they've got all this covered, they've got all this buttoned down, because I think there's always a concern when accountants look at a product and there's any kind of risk regarding security, regarding AML, because it's something we have to focus on so much as a profession. And I'm sure that Dex are all over it, but I'd like to see something just stating that they are considering this has been announced.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me, and as you say, Indy's kind of covered this a few times, and we've seen this, with various people in our industry and outside of our industry, where they've fallen foul of money laundering regulations and been deemed not to have done enough. Obviously, this is the early stages of an investigation. We don't know the outcome, so it may well be that AirWallex have done nothing wrong, or they may well have done something wrong, in which case they'll probably end up with a fine and have to move on with it. I mean, it's interesting that this investigation's happened in Australia, because I remember trying to put a client on AirWallex a while back, and I was actually at a group of companies, of which the Australian company was the parent company, and they pushed back really hard on that because of the kind of the connections with like Hong Kong and stuff at the time. And there was a big thing from the Australian government about not dealing with businesses sort of connected to China. This is going back a few years ago. So, I'm sure that there's no real significant correlation there, but this is just sort of the environment we live in at the moment. Hopefully for the investors and for everyone else that's sort of connected to this, this will just sort of eventually come to being dealt with, and that'll all be over. But you're right. And Dext, I mean, I don't know. Do Dext need to get in front of this, or do Dext just have to kind of like stay quiet and just kind of this is a problem with the partner that they've gone to bed with, as it were, and these things happen. Regulatory challenges happen all the time. It happens in our world in accounting. And it's only the really big stuff that becomes public. That doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't necessarily mean that this is bad per se. It just means that we're maintaining quality in our marketplace.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess my viewpoint is that things that aren't addressed, people speculate on. So if you go out and make a comment, at least you're acknowledging it and you're stating what you're doing. If you don't do that, then people wonder what's going on. But I don't think it's going to have any negative impact whatsoever on how the Dext payment system will work. It's just timing, right? But people at Dext must be like, oh, come on. Why did this have to happen now?